Hello, my wonderful, wonderful friends. Welcome back to our Entitled People, where you'll get to hear stories about people who think that the world revolves around them and that nobody else matters. In this episode, you'll hear 5 stories about entitled people. The first is a neighbor who has OP's car towed because she didn't like where it was parked. The second story is an entitled Karen who happens to hate tattoos and harasses OP about them. And the third story, this one is a crazy one that you won't want to miss about OP's family and how they demand to be put in OP's will since OP's very, very wealthy. Guys, buckle up. And remember, if you start to feel angry, just breathe. I hope you stay for the stories today and hit that subscribe button for future stories. Let's dive in. This first story is titled, Neighbor Had My Brother's Car Towed on Our Property. I'm pretty pissed because this happened just a few hours ago. Anyway, to set the stage's players, there's me, my neighbor who's an entitled boomer who's a nosy old bat, and her husband who's a nice neighbor. There's also my brother and my grandmother. For some backstory, nosy old bat and I both live on the corner houses next to a busy street, which is relevant to the story. And oh man, this lady is bordering on our insane people level of crazy and nosy because, oh my God, is she ever nuts. I've lived in this house my entire life with my grandmother, and nosy old bat used to watch me for a little bit when I was 6, until my aunt could pick me up to babysit me. This apparently has given her the mindset that she can attempt to control my life and tattle on me to my grandmother. My grandmother knows when I have company over. A lot of the times they park on the driveway since the street is usually crowded. I usually call or text her to let her know that there's a car in her spot and that I'll have them move when she's home. Sometimes my grandma will tell me it's fine and she'll park on the street if there's parking available and then move her car after my friend's gone. A non-issue, right? Not to nosy old bat. She's been known to get up in my business, to go and knock on my door and demand to know who's there and if I'm doing the quote nasty with those friends. It's hilarious to me when people ask if I'm sleeping around, but it's infuriating when nosy old bat does this because she's super nosy and thinks she practically owns the neighborhood and acts as if this is an HOA which she's in charge of, which she's not. She makes calls on other people's behalves constantly, and we're no different. Anyway, now that the backstory is done, on to the story. Alright, so, my little brother's a Marine, and he's currently deployed in Hawaii, and his car has been on our property for a while now because, well, he's deployed, and obviously he can't come and drive it since he's in Hawaii. This apparently gives her the idea to call a tow truck because it hasn't moved since he left it. The reason she got it towed was that she did not know who the car belonged to. It's not even a terrible looking car either, but I guess it pissed her off that it was sitting there due to it being a car that she didn't know. This happened between the time my grandmother and I left for Costco and the time we got home. Nosy old bat called the towing company to tow my brother's car because, in her batty old boomer logic, the car's been there for 2 weeks and it's just sitting there. It's on our property, not hurting anything. So now my grandmother has to call the police and the towing company to get the car back, and she's rightfully furious about this because it means another towing fee that was completely unnecessary. She can't even get it until tomorrow because nothing's even open. She was met with voicemails of the towing not even being open either, which was bizarre because it was before 7 p.m., but whatever. I don't know the towing hours since we've never had to deal with that before. I absolutely hate her with a seething and unholy passion, because this isn't the first time she's attempted this garbage either. She's done this on other neighbors too because she thinks she can police the neighborhood. I do not care how rude this makes me, but I will not be paying that towing fee, and I will not be letting my grandmother pay it. Nosy old bat will be paying that because it's none of her business to be nosing her face into things. I don't care if you're old, you do not stick your nose into someone's business and life, especially if that thing in question is on someone else's property. I will take this woman to court if she refuses to pay for this because she had no right to do this. I'll give updates if anything further happens because I'm furious, and I don't really care if the old woman doesn't want to pay for it. She will or face court for her nosiness. You know what? That totally sounds like such a shady towing company. Nosy old bat had no authority to have a vehicle that doesn't belong to her towed, and the towing company should have 100% checked for proper documentation before towing it away. Can someone tell me if I can call a tow truck to tow my neighbor's car if he's being annoying? I really don't think that can happen. So OP's got an update, and the update says, my cranky and tired butt marched over to her house. She was awakened outside and ripped a new one into her about keeping her nose into her own personal life and to pay for the towing, or I was gonna take it higher up and nail her for illegally having it towed. And she's paying for the tow truck reluctantly. This next story is titled, Karen Thinks That I'm Too Young to Have Tattoos and Demands I Cover Them in Public. This happened when I was 28. I have 8 tattoos, all of which have meaning about my life. The lily on my chest is about the sister I had that died before I was born. The spider on my arm is about me overcoming my fear of spiders. My phoenix tattoo is about me going skydiving in 2016. I also have a fairy on my shoulder, another flower on my chest, and a few other smaller tattoos on my arm. When I'm wearing long sleeves and a high-neck shirt, you can't see any of my tattoos. In the summer, however, they're out for the world to see. I'd like to think that none of them are offensive in my opinion, and I often get compliments about them. And then I met a Karen. It was a summer day, and I was downtown doing some shopping, wearing a 3/4 sleeve with open shoulders, making all of my tattoos visible. It was really hot outside, so I just wanted to finish my shopping and get home to my air-conditioned room. And then it happened. I was in a grocery store grabbing a few things I needed when I got the feeling that I was being watched. I looked down the aisle and saw a middle-aged woman with what I now know to be a Karen outfit staring at me with a face that would make Dolores Umbridge uncomfortable. I just smiled at her and went on with my shopping. Out of nowhere, she decided to talk to me. Karen said, "You should really cover those. It's not appropriate to have them out like that." At first, I thought she was talking to an employee, and I just ignored her. But she said, "Hello, I'm talking to you. You need to cover up." As I realized she was talking to me, I started to look around on my body, not knowing what she was talking about. Maybe I had a wardrobe malfunction that I was unaware of. I said, "Huh? Excuse me?" Karen says, "Your tattoos. I know you like them, but don't you think you're setting a bad example? I mean, it's bad enough that you have that many tattoos at your age, but you should not be flaunting them like that. Show some respect." I was about to tell her that I'm much older than I look, and the fact that I was 28 when she said, "You're too young to have that many tattoos. You should have them covered in public." I asked her, "How old do you think I am?" "I'm 28, and it's too flippin' hot to cover anything. Not that it's any of your business." The look of shock on her face grew even stronger as she heard me talking, which I guess made me seem even younger in her eyes. Karen demands, "Show me some respect." Me, trying to avoid the confrontation, said, "Whatever, lady. You have yourself a good day. Maybe pull that stick out of your clacka while you're at it." And I left the aisle, hoping that was the end of it. But the lunatic trailed behind me for a few minutes after that while giving me a death glare the whole time. But thankfully she lost interest quick, and I lost sight of her. That was the weirdest interaction I've ever had with a Karen, or anyone for that matter. I don't know if I should take that as a compliment that I look younger than I am, or be insulted that I act like a kid. Either way, I like the way I am and wouldn't change it for anyone. Guys, let's all take a second to congratulate Op on conquering arachnophobia. She got a freaking tattoo of a spider on her arm. What a legend. I also picked up a new phrase today, pull that stick out of your clacka. I'm keeping that one for future use. Clacka! This next story is titled, Leave Everything You Have to Our Children. I'm 39, successful, and I'm quite well off. My siblings, sadly, are not. My brother, 42, has 3 children. My sister, 35, also has 3 with one on the way. My youngest sister, 28, is married and pregnant, but she has nothing to do with the events of this post. We were all raised to believe that money doesn't matter and all you need is a happy marriage and a lot of kids to live a happy life. Being poor and having a lot of kids was somehow glorified. Fortunately for me, I didn't buy into that nonsense. I always knew that I never wanted children. I focused on my career and achieving success. Today I own my own home, have wonderful pets and a loving boyfriend. My family, however, seems to think there's something wrong with my lifestyle. My parents have often commented that my 5-bedroom house is empty without any kids running around and there's no point in me living in such a big house. My siblings often tell me that I'm selfish for not having kids and actually enjoying my life. However, their disdain for my selfish lifestyle doesn't stop them from begging me for money. My brother and sister have called me numerous times and asked me to help pay their bills. Now, if it's something serious like clothes or school supplies for their kids, I'm willing to pitch in, but I always refuse when I'm asked to pay for trips to amusement parks, etc., and then I'm bombarded with, "But they're your niece and nephew." I also pay for my parents to stay in a high-end assisted living facility. They're my parents. I felt that I owed them this much. However, I couldn't help but feel insulted when they sang praises from my siblings for breeding and following in their footsteps, and how my parents wished that I had done the same with my life. They treat me, among all their kids, like I'm the biggest disappointment. For this reason, I've distanced myself from them. I only call or visit to check up on them, and I don't let them be a part of my life. The other day, I got a call from my sister asking if she, her husband, and my brother and his wife could come over. I said, okay, why not? As soon as we all sat down, they asked me to leave my fortune to their kids in equal portions, and if I did, they would stop asking me for financial help for as long as they live. They said this as if they were doing me a favor. My brother asked, "You don't have kids, so who are you going to leave it to?" I told them I was going to leave my money to charities and that I don't owe them a dime. When they went on your selfish tirade, I told them to get lost. The next morning, I got a call from my dad telling me that they were disappointed in me. I simply hung up. Okay, so I'm no lawyer or anything, but I remember hearing somewhere that if you put family members on your will and leave them $5 or $10 or something, there's no way they can contest it. I think OP should do that. It's also deliciously passive-aggressive. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm often very, very wrong. Okay, so OP has an update to this post, and it reads, "After the altercation with my siblings, my parents tried a different strategy. They tried to sweet-talk me, and suddenly their tune had changed from, 'You're so selfish' to, 'We didn't mean it like that, let's talk.' So after they kept pestering me to have a word with them in person, I invited them over. Now, my parents know damn well that chocolate is bad for dogs, but my mom has tried to give it to them on so many occasions. When I tell her off, she always comes back with, 'But maybe they like it, and I was just being nice.' This time, when they came over, I left them in the living room and went to the kitchen to get some refreshments. While I was there, one of my dogs came over to greet them. I could see them from the kitchen. My mom petted him for a while and then reached into her purse and pulled out a freaking bar of chocolate. She broke off a piece and was about to give it to him when I stormed over and knocked it out of her hands. My parents looked shocked, and I was enraged. Even after being told repeatedly that chocolate is bad for dogs, they just don't get it. When I asked my mom what the hell she was doing, my dad actually started yelling at me and told me that I was being rude. I told him that either they were complete idiots or they were trying to hurt my dog. When they tried to argue back, I grabbed my dad by the arm and walked him out the door. My mom followed. This was less than a month ago, and I've moved them into a much less cushy facility. They won't be mistreated. I would never allow that to happen. The nice, fully furnished mini apartment they had earlier with all kinds of luxuries will soon be a distant memory. This next story is titled, "My Entitled Mother-in-Law to Be Threw My Family Heirloom Engagement Ring Down a Storm Drain." I've seen a lot of crazy people in my life, but my potential future mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I've ever met. I'm a 30-year-old female and have been with my boyfriend for about 8 months now. For the first few months, everything was amazing. He is the sweetest and most caring man I've ever been with. He likes to surprise me with fun dates and flowers for no apparent reason. The biggest surprise of all, though, was when I met his mother. I met his parents for the first time a few months ago. The first thing future mother-in-law said to me when I walked in the door was, "Are you Jewish?" I'm not, and I'm not particularly religious, but I was raised Catholic. Once I told her this, it was the beginning of the madness. She immediately stopped talking to me and acted as if I didn't exist. I was extremely nervous about meeting my boyfriend's parents, so this really broke my heart. I was determined to make a good impression, so I kept trying to connect with her. This was a huge mistake, and I should have just let it go. Once we were all seated for dinner, she finally decided to try to make conversation. I have naturally red hair, and she asked me if my parents have the same color. I told them I have the same color hair as my mother. She then had the audacity to ask me, while sitting at the dinner table in front of everyone, "Does the carpet match the drapes?" I had no idea how to respond and just sat there stunned. Seeing my reaction, she said, "Don't worry, I'll just ask Dan about it later." I looked over at my boyfriend, who seemed equally as shocked and embarrassed about it, but he didn't say anything. She then started to go on about my hair being too curly. She told me that I really need to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I'm out with her son. Then, when I didn't eat much at dinner, she gave me her version of a compliment. I was told it was good that I'm watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was my first meeting with this woman. As soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. My boyfriend was texting me and apologizing for his mother's behavior, but the damage was done, and I told him I needed time to think. He went into apology overload after this and started sending flowers to my office every day and leaving messages begging me to talk to him. I finally agreed, and we went out to dinner. He told me he spoke with his mother about her inappropriate comments, and he swore it would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. Fast forward 2 weeks to when he invited me to a family birthday party. This time, I would also be meeting his sisters and grandparents. His grandparents and sisters are awesome people. Not a bad word to say about them. They asked me normal questions about my job, my family, and my friends. His mother seemed to be avoiding me throughout the evening, and honestly, I was okay with that. I went to grab something from my purse, and I noticed that my purse was not where I left it. I looked everywhere but couldn't find it. I went and asked my boyfriend, and he began to help me look. He then got a strange look on his face, and he quickly went upstairs. I could then hear a lot of yelling coming from an upstairs bedroom. He came back down holding my purse after a few minutes and told me that we were leaving. Once we got in the car, I asked him what was going on. He explained to me that his mother had taken my purse so she could get into my wallet and find my driver's license. She intended to try to run a background check on me. He told me that she had told him this earlier, but he honestly thought she was joking. I thought it was best if I avoided any of his family functions for the time being. This worked out great for a while, and he went to any of his family parties alone. Last week his family had their family reunion, and he asked me to please come with him. I was very reluctant, but considering there would be so many people present, I didn't think she would pull anything. When we got there, everything was going great. I met his extended family and got to catch up with his sisters. His mother did seem to be shooting me death glares all night, but I brushed it off. Soon she came over and joined the table that I was seated at with his sisters and some cousins. The conversation was pleasant as we were talking about his sister's children. His sister has a daughter who's 12 and the same age as my niece. I then showed his sister a picture of my niece on my phone. His mother took a look at the screen and began to laugh. She told me that she hopes if me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. Now, my niece is beautiful, by the way, and she's only 12 years old. What kind of monster attacks a 12-year-old child's appearance? This was my breaking point, and I went off like a volcano. I began to scream at her, and I told her she's the most evil person I've ever had the disadvantage to meet. I told her if I ever did have children with her son that she can be certain that she'll never meet them because hell is too far to travel to. She began to play victim and wailed that I had just misunderstood her joke. My boyfriend came rushing over at this point, and she threw herself into his arms, telling him that I'm a horrible woman and he needed to throw me out right now. He told her that wasn't going to happen and to stop making a fool out of herself. She seemed to accept this for a moment and just sat back down. She just kept sobbing that I didn't understand how to take a joke. Then, something in her snapped as she noticed something that my boyfriend was holding in his hand and began to have another meltdown. I didn't understand what was happening at this point and just stood there watching a grown woman pitch a fit like a toddler. None of what she was saying made any sense to me, as it was mostly just incoherent screaming, but I did pick up on many derogatory comments directed my way. My boyfriend then told me that we were leaving and told me to grab my things. As I started to get ready, my future mother-in-law made a lunge for my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box he was holding. She then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring." She then ran outside and threw the box down a storm drain. It turns out my boyfriend was intending on proposing to me. He had just obtained his grandmother's ring at the reunion and was holding the box in his hand. His grandmother is completely heartbroken because now her ring is down a storm drain instead of continuing on in the family as she'd always wanted. I don't know where to go from here. I'm devastated, confused, and exhausted. Can I ask him to never see his mother again? Is it my place to say something like that? I'm sorry that my story is long, but I really needed to get this rant off my chest. Grandmother's ring down the storm drain is absolutely insane. Like, yeah, I get that you're upset, and you don't want a future daughter-in-law to have that ring, but to take a ring that's been in the family for who knows how many generations and throwing it down a storm drain so nobody can have it. Oh, that grandmother needs to lay the smackdown on that mother and make her go fish that ring out of the storm drain. Guys, so OP has an update that she created a separate post for, and here it is. I've been getting messages asking for an update on my situation with my future mother-in-law, so I thought I'd make a quick post on what happened most recently. My fiancé went no contact with her after everything that happened. This lasted all about a week before she showed up banging at our door. My fiancé was at work, and I was alone at home at the time. She was wailing that she was sorry and just wanted to see me to apologize. Since I have neighbors who are beginning to watch the spectacle, I let her inside to talk. At first, she was very apologetic, and she just wants to have a fresh start. She was pretty convincing, and I was actually considering just letting it all go. That's when she saw my Christmas tree, and all heck broke loose yet again. She began to scream that I was trying to convert her son to Christianity, and that I was just a little witch who was trying to ruin her family. I kindly asked her to please just leave, and that she was not welcome here, but she was not budging. She told me that no son of hers would ever celebrate Christmas and proceeded to run towards the tree. She began tearing off every ornament and throwing them, leaving them smashed on the floor. I had to grab her and physically drag her away. This ended with her punching me several times and biting me on the hand. I was finally able to throw her out the front door and grabbed my phone to call the police. The police arrived soon after, and just like that she completely stopped her fit and began to try to play the victim. She told the police that I was an intruder in her son's apartment and that I had attacked her. The police then came to interview me, and I told them what actually happened. I showed them the bite mark on my hand and the bruises that were beginning to form. My fiancé arrived at the scene and immediately came to my side. He confirmed to the officers that I do live there, and his mother is a nutcase. Seeing that her son was siding with me sent her into yet another tantrum. The police asked me if I would like to place charges against my mother-in-law. I looked to my fiancé, and I could tell he was conflicted on what to do. I had to do what would make me feel safe in the end, and decided to place charges. Future mother-in-law was taken to the hospital and then arrested upon her release. She's now facing charges for assault, and I've taken a restraining order against her. This has placed a serious strain on my relationship with my fiancé. He and the rest of his family want me to drop the charges against his mother. He tells me that since I have a restraining order, she can no longer come near me, so I have nothing to worry about. I don't think he fully understands how terrifying this experience was for me. He tells me that it's my decision in the end, and he will stand by me. But he doesn't want to see his mother go to prison. Part of me wants to pack my bags and run. I told him that I felt this way, and he's begging me to stay with him. He says we can move and have no contact with his family in the future. I'm so confused and conflicted on what to do. I have a question for you guys. Would you marry into a family if you knew that the mother or father would never get along with you? Please leave your comments below because I'd love to know your opinions on this whole situation. If you were OP, would you have turned around and said no more seeing this guy, or would you keep going on and having this stuff happen at family reunions? This next story is entitled, Parent Thinks They Rented the Whole Park. I'm at a city park with my kids. We've been to this park a bunch. There's this one spot where there's a rocky hill all tree covered. It's nice and shady on a hot day. There's a playground and a pavilion at the top of the hill. We get up there, and I immediately notice loud noises, and I'm having to step over cables and extension cords. Someone rented the pavilion and set up not one but 3 bounce houses around it. Great. So, I have to give the disappointing news to my kids that even though they're surrounded by bounce houses, they cannot play in them since this is a private party. But they're free to go hit the playground. Everyone's cool. I sit on the bench as my kids go to town on the fake pirate ship when I hear, "Hey!" That's when the dad, doing his best to imitate the situation from Jersey Shore, walks up to me and informs me that the playground is closed for a private party. I look at him and inform him that the public park does not close for private parties, and it sounds like he rented the pavilion nearby, which is fine, but it doesn't give him exclusive use of the neighboring playground. He storms off and returns with a rental agreement and shoves it in my face, telling me to get my kids and to leave. Right. So, the rental agreement is very clear. For the pavilion, all for the grand sum of $35 for 4 hours. How could any sensible adult think that $35 grants you exclusive use of a public playground? Moreover, why is it so important for you to have exclusive use of a public playground? I again pointed out to him that he rented the pavilion, not the park, and my kids won't even go near his bounce houses, and we won't go into his pavilion, but the playground is fair game for everyone. He begins hurling threats, and I'm thinking about just taking my kids and leaving to avoid this idiot and the whole situation. Then, I decide to take a stand on principle. So I tell him no and proceed to use my phone to find the number for the park office. During the summer months, they employ park rangers who have peace officer authority. I call the park ranger and tell him that there's trouble up at this shady playground and they need to come right away. Sure enough, as I'm getting off the phone, this idiot returns with two of his meathead friends to tell me that they're ejecting me from the park. No, you're not, and if you touch me, I'm calling the cops and pressing charges. I said this with no anger, no rage, with this promise of action. However, one of them kind of widens his eyes and steps back, saying to his friend, "Just leave him alone, man. This guy, for some reason, does not want the police coming, and it's very obvious." The ringleader won't back down, however, and tries his best to get in my face to scream and to yell. He grabs my arm and starts to pull me just as this is happening. The ranger pulls up and tells everyone to stop and come towards him. This smug guy shoves the rental contract into the chest of the ranger, telling him that I'm trespassing, that he rented the space for the day for his kid's party. He proceeds to read the contract and says, "This is for renting the pavilion. You have use of the pavilion, but the playground's open for public use," and he hands it back. "Also, your permit doesn't allow you to set up bounce houses. Where did you plug these in?" The ranger follows the extension cords and sees that they ran them to the nearby public bathrooms where there was an outdoor outlet. The outlet had a cover over it which was locked. This dude cut the lock off so he could plug in his extension cord. The ranger comes back with a broken lock and said, "Did you cut this lock?" The guy replied, It was like that when I found it." "Really?" "Because it was intact this morning." "So, you're telling me some random person cut this lock and you just happened upon it within the last 2 hours?" I guess." Long story short, the ranger let him stay and let him keep the bounce castles because he didn't want to ruin a kid's party. He wrote the guy citation for the broken lock and the unauthorized power use and banned him from coming back to the park for the rest of the season. I wonder how many people that got intimidated and scared away before OP came along and stood his ground and called the park ranger. You've got to be super entitled to think that you own a whole section of a park for $35, but it doesn't surprise me, guys. These stories really got me thinking, and I'd like to share my perspective. The neighbor had my brother's car towed on our property story has me fuming. I can't stand nosy neighbors like this boomer who thinks she owns the block, towing a Marine's car from private property. Insane! OP's rage is justified. I'd be livid too. Forcing her to pay the tow fee was the right call. Her meddling deserves consequences. Shady tow companies enabling this nonsense need a reality check. Karen thinks that I'm too young to have tattoos is peak busybody behavior. I love OP's tattoos, especially the spider for conquering fear, badass. Karen's judgmental tirade about covering them in public? Mind your own business. OP's snappy pull that stick out of your clacka comeback had me laughing. It's a compliment she looks youthful, but Karen's obsession with propriety is pathetic. Leave everything you have to our children hits hard on family entitlement. I respect OP's child-free success and generosity, paying for parents' care and kids' needs, but demanding her entire fortune? Outrageous. Kicking parents out for endangering her dog with Chocolate Show's spine, they don't deserve her support after that. Leave a token $5 in the will, savage and smart. My entitled mother-in-law to be threw my family heirloom engagement ring down a storm drain is next-level crazy. I'm horrified at this woman's cruelty, insulting Op, stealing her purse, tossing an heirloom ring. Unhinged. Pressing charges and getting a restraining order was the right move. I'd run from that family. Marrying into that chaos? Hard pass, unless the fiancé cuts her off permanently. Entitled parent thinks they rented the whole park screams delusional privilege. I admire Op standing firm against that bully dad. $35 for a pavilion doesn't buy a public playground. The ranger's intervention and citation for the lock vandalism? Perfect. Don't let entitled jerks ruin public spaces. And that brings us to another end of Our Entitled People. Guys, if you missed the last episode of Our Entitled People, check it out, give it a listen, and I'll see you guys in the next one.